writer Thomas Pynchon has a lot to teach your average PR man, despite, or perhaps because of the fact that he has never given any interviews, never posed for any publicity photos, or even allowed so much as a biographical sketch on the dust jacket of his novels. Pynchon is considered by many to be one of America's greatest living novelists, and all on the basis of 3 novels. Probably his best-known book is the colossal Gravity's Rainbow, a dense, encyclopedic, indeed some would say endless, black comedy about the V-2 rocket. Well now, after a gap of some 17 years, comes another novel, Vineland. The official publication is tomorrow, but it's already been available copiously in the shops for over a month, and people who've read it are beginning to re-evaluate his whole reputation. David Gale explores the paranoid world of Thomas Pynchon.
About the paranoia often noted under the drug, there is nothing remarkable. Like other sorts of paranoia, it is nothing less than the onset, the leading edge, of the discovery that everything is connected. Everything in the creation, a secondary illumination, not yet blindingly one, but at least connected.
One of his big themes is there some kind of meaning? Is there some kind of pattern? Is there some kind of design? And in the late 20th century, this is a question that appeals to a lot of people. There's a sense of chaos, or what William Burroughs calls a state of permanent emergency. That sense that anybody who's going to come on and say, yes, all this massive information can be patternized or put into a design structure, even if it's the meaning is awful, which it very often is in his novels. There's still this sense that it isn't chaos, it's coherence.
In 1963, a 25-year-old Cornell graduate called Thomas Pynchon published V, a vast, multi-layered novel about, among many other things, the quest for a mysterious woman. It was his first novel and a sensational critical success. It also marked the beginning of one of modern literature's greatest mysteries. The moment V was published, Thomas Pynchon vanished without trace. Reporters were told he was in Mexico, unavailable for comment. Since then, he has succeeded in maintaining a complete and utterly provocative invisibility. He has never been interviewed. No photograph has been published since his high school yearbook of 1953. No one knows what he looks like, what his circumstances are, or where he lives. Some doubt if he lives at all.
Curious facts about his life. The file, he was in the Navy for a couple of years, and the building that held his file burned down. He was, his university records have gone missing, or is it vice versa?
I knew a girl who worked in the Cornell office and confirmed that they had gone missing. Everybody knew that. She simply said that, yes, it was weird. They weren't there in the drawer. They should have been.
But they all add to the wealth of apocrypha about Pynchon, you know, that the invisibility somehow becomes established and substantiated by not only the fact that he refuses the option, and he's perfectly entitled to refuse the option of making himself a public personality, but then the files go missing too, and then it becomes an enigma, and then people pursue the enigma.
The enigma has a handful of fixed points. It's pretty certain he was born in Long Island in 1937. His middle name is Ruggles. He studied engineering and English, and once worked for the Boeing Corporation in Seattle. There are a few dozen facts like that, after which it's anyone's guess. And in the Pynchon industry, anyone and everyone does guess. His absence encourages the wildest speculations. Perhaps, say the extremists, he was never Thomas Pynchon at all. For the dedicated Pynchonite, every clue is worth pursuing. Ever resourceful, he'll look in the phone book and find a Pynchon listed there, just one, at an address somewhere in South London.
Mr. Pynchon?
Yeah, it could be. Who wants to know? Well, we're with BBC Two's Late Show, and we're doing an item on Thomas Pynchon, the American writer. And you're the only person in the phone book with the name Pynchon. We're really anxious to talk to any relatives of this man. Is there any chance about coming in and doing an interview? Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. That's great. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's just over here.
So who exactly are you, Mr. Pynchon?
Well, I'm not actually Mr. Pynchon. I'm not related to him or anything. I'm a big Pynchon fan. I'm a musician, a writer.
So
that's about it, really.
Well, why the name in the phone book?
Well, basically, the story is that about 4 or 5 years ago, I just got disconnected and had my phone put on in the name of my favourite writers, just Gabriel Marquez and Thomas Pynchon. And it's been a quite handy little anonymous name in the phone book ever since.
Well, what's your real name?
No, I'm not going to tell you that.
In Pynchonia, every direct approach leads to a more or less absurd dead end. Again and again, the search for the man leads back to the remarkable books that made his name, back into a world that is a mirror image of the Pynchon cult. Quests, clues, red herrings, dangerous conspiracies.
In The Crying of Lot 49, Pynchon's second novel, the plot was very largely to do with a legacy left to the heroine, Oedipa Mars, by her husband. And the decree of the legacy was that she followed clues. And she follows one clue after another, and she gets engaged as she does it in a whole series of media and communications problems.
Oedipa got up after a while and left the Greek way and entered the city again, the infected city, and spent the rest of the night finding the image of the Trastero post horn. In Chinatown, in the dark window of a herbalist, she thought she saw it on a sign among ideographs, but the streetlight was dim. Later, on a sidewalk, she saw 2 of them in chalk, 20 feet apart. Between them, a complicated array of boxes, some with letters, some with numbers. A kid's game, places on a map, dates from a secret history.
Paranoia is a key word in this book, that sense that there is a pattern, and it may be sinister, and there are agents everywhere, and they're after you. And there's no use saying, like that guy proverbially said to Freud, you know, but doctor, they are following me. They just are, and that's the fact, and Pynchon knows it. There are conspiracies. There are patterns. There are hidden agencies. And I think that sense in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in America is very strong.
Gravity's Rainbow is Pynchon's huge, unclassifiable epic about the development of the German V-2 missile in the closing years of World War II. It mixes an awesome technical knowledge with paranoid visions on a global scale.
The V-2, of grim memory to many Londoners, is still under development in the USA. And at White Sands Proving Ground, New Mexico, one of the latest was being set up recently for test.
This war was never political at all. The politics was all theater, all just to keep the people distracted. Secretly, it was being dictated instead by the needs of technology, by a conspiracy between human beings and techniques, by something that needed the energy burst of war, crying, "Money be damned, the very life of..." insert name of nation is at stake. But meaning most likely, dawn is nearly here. I need my night's blood, my funding, more.
Few books demand as much explaining as Gravity's Rainbow. It invites a microscopic examination and delivers the investigator into a vertiginous world of esoteric references. What is this handbook of ballistics? Does this relate in some way
critical to understanding Gravity's Rainbow?
In what way?
Well, the Poisson distribution, which is a mathematical way of analysing random distributions of random distribution, and used in ballistics. Postcard of a rocket.
That's a V2?
Yeah.
Right.
And in ballistics, you do need to know how your bullets and your bombs are going to fall, even when they start falling randomly.
In the 70s, Pynchon became the hottest novelist on the campus, replacing, mercifully, the bilbaginous Tolkien saga. No living writer had ever been subjected to such intense critical scrutiny. The bibliography lists many full-length books and several hundred theses to date. A regular journal, Pynchon Notes, publishes articles with titles like Included Middles and the Trope of the Absent Insight.
There is an awful lot of information and simple interpretation to be done in Pynchon before some things are clear. We had to talk to computer scientists, to biochemists and whoever to make it clear. Maybe some of it's worthwhile, but there is always that worry in critical studies that it's top-heavy.
I think, too, with Thomas Pynchon, that he kind of creates the problem because I think he's actually parodying it and satirizing it. I think he sets up his fiction with these layers of... And we come along and we satisfy the satire and we satisfy the parody. But he sets up these layers of complexities and I just feel sure, without knowing, of course, I just feel sure that he's fully well aware that this graduate student will come along and pick up that particular binary opposition and chase that for a PhD, or this one, or that one. And I think he layers his text almost as a joke on the academic establishment. I think it is a joke on the academic establishment.
Gravity's Rainbow was followed by a long silence. As the years rolled by, the disciples began to fear that he might never write again. The myth kept on growing. Then, early last year, rumors began to circulate. A new manuscript, transatlantic negotiations, locked room readings, secret auctions.
What happened was that there was a list of publishers, which was drawn up, I think, in New York by Pynchon's agent there, and that was supplied to Deborah Rogers, his agent here, who was sent one copy of the manuscript and one alone. So various publishers were invited to come and see it and read it, but they had to go to Deborah Rogers' office in order to do it. They weren't allowed to take it away, they weren't allowed to take notes, and after the auction was over, the manuscript was returned to New York.
The secrecy surrounding the publication of this book, his first novel since Gravity's Rainbow in 1973, has been, let's face it, ridiculous. I mean, really. So he wants a private life and no photographs and nobody to know his home address. I can dig it. I can relate to that. But, like, he should try it when it's compulsory instead of a free choice option.
Vineland is not the novel Pynchon's fans were expecting. It's softer than Gravity's Rainbow, more nostalgic, drawing liberally on references to a pop and TV culture. Set in California in 1984, it focuses on a group of refugees from the 60s who are on the run from drug-busting federal prosecutor Brock Vond.
Brock Vond's genius was to have seen in the activities of the 60s left not threats to order, but unacknowledged desires for it. Brock saw the deep, if he'd allowed himself to feel it, the sometimes touching need only to stay children forever, safe inside some extended national family. The hunch he was betting on was that these kid rebels, being halfway there already, would be easy to turn and cheap to develop. They'd only been listening to the wrong music, breathing the wrong smoke, admiring the wrong personalities. They needed some reconditioning.
Well, it's an utterly 60s book. And what makes it 60s is not simply the contents, but the form. The plot, so to speak, is a kind of parody and a quintessence of all those paranoid thriller conspiracy theories of the 60s, many of which did turn out to have a lot of truth in them.
Many loyalists have been acutely disappointed. On the evidence of this lightweight, shaggy dog story, wrote one critic, Pynchon's day has simply been and gone.
It's quite ironic, really, the professors who have made Pynchon their preserve for so long are very keen on his being thought of as difficult so that they can unlock, with their key to all mythologies, the secret of Pynchon. And now he comes up with this novel that's all about sex and drugs and rock and roll and television and popular songs and all the things that are completely a closed book to them. So they say, oh, well, it's very inaccessible.
Whole problem with you folks' generation, Isaiah opined, nothing personal, is you believed in your revolution, put your lives right out there for it, but you sure didn't understand much about the tube. The minute the tube got hold of you folks, that was it. That whole alternative America, El Dedo Mito, just like the Indians, sold it all to your real enemies, and even in 1970 dollars, it was way too cheap.
At the end of Vineland, Pynchon's fabulous absence is as paradoxical as ever. The whole phenomenon seems driven by an oddly self-fulfilling paranoia. The more Pynchon hides, the more his readers and the media will want to find him. But perhaps, as the first print run of Vineland sells out before it's even officially published, somewhere in America, Thomas Pynchon, whoever he is feeling fine, cushioned by the comforting mists of myth.
It's worked. I mean, exactly the same thing has happened in America. And the book there has been reviewed 3 weeks before publication by everybody. I mean, it's top of the bestseller list 2 weeks before the book is published. So, I mean, if which I don't think it is, I mean, if it was an entirely cynical ploy to get publicity, I mean, it absolutely works in spades.
I published V in 1963. Adored the book with a passion, and of all the authors that I had published to that time, he was probably the one I most wanted to meet. And I kept saying to his agent, look, I'd really like to meet him. And she kept saying, well, it's a bit difficult at the moment, or he's not here, abroad, in a way, etc. And then one day, I think it was in 1980, but roughly 10 years ago, the telephone went, and the switchboard said, Thomas Pynchon wants to talk to you. Now, I couldn't believe it. So I picked it up, and I said, the Thomas Pynchon? He said, yes. I said, well, where are you? He said, I'm at the British Museum. Well, the British Museum, of course, is about 2 minutes' walk from here. So I said, well, could we meet, or when could we meet? And he said, well, how about now? And I said, great.
Tom Mashler came bursting through the door, looking unusually flustered for him, with a sort of tall, reasonably gaunt, reasonably fashionable man behind him, and introduced him as Tom Pynchon, which made me laugh. I knew obviously I knew who Thomas Pynchon was. He was one of the American authors that we were publishing at the time, along with people like Philip Roth. I didn't realize just how exciting it was to meet him. He was sort of over 6 foot. He looked like a slightly eccentric advertising man or a slightly smart playwright, something like that. He had sort of crinkly, longish hair, a Zapata-style moustache. And he had blue striped shirt with a white collar. So, and he had sort of slightly checked, bordering on loud check trousers. And he came in and he was very nice and very sort of soft-spoken. And he asked for some ephemera, which rather stumped me at the time. But it turned out that he wanted posters for his, posters of children's books for his children's bedroom's wall. And we chatted a bit, and then he left. And I sort of thought nothing of it. But the girl in the room, who also worked in publicity, Maggie, was literally a sort of quivering wreck, which he wasn't usually after yet another American author came in. And she then explained that, he didn't exist, or lots of people think he didn't exist, and this was terribly extraordinary, and took her about 3 days to get over it.
And then, for 2 weeks, I saw him every other day. And after about, I think we took him out to dinner that first night. Then he came to dinner at our house 2 nights later. And then I sort of got slightly more courageous, and I said, would you mind if we asked 1 or 2 friends around? Imagine, I mean, this guy is a complete myth, and nobody had met him, and many, hundreds of thousands of people admired him. I said, no, sure, I'd love to meet some people, he said. So we invited some people, and so it went. And then one day, I rang him up to make another date, after about 2 weeks. Phone was dead, cut off, and I haven't heard from him since.
David Gale, a little wiser, but still finding the man himself invisible as ever. Vineland is published officially tomorrow.